What is going on, comic fam? It's your boy, the Bearded Comic Bro, and I am joined back again to the show, Alex Segura. Welcome back, my friend.
Thank you for having me. It's good to be here again.
Yeah, I had you on a long time ago talking about your book, Secret Identity, and then we had you on earlier in the year talking about Dick Tracy. And then that time when we were talking, you mentioned that you had a sequel to Secret Identity coming up, and Alter Ego is by the time we're recording this, it's going to drop when we release this.
hmm
Alter Ego. I want to talk all things because you've been busy. We were just talking
I've got the
backstage.
cover. Let me get you the
Yeah,
cover so
show
I
them the
can
cover.
show it.
So good. I love the look that you got there.
Yeah.
And we were talking back, like you're so busy with comics. Like you've been working with Marvel and the Star Wars universe. You've been Dick Tracy with Mad Cave. You've got Green Hornet stuff coming up. Um, but one of the things that just came out recently is the question all on the
Yes.
Watchtower from DC. Tell me about that project.
Yeah, so it was I've done a few question shorts for DC. I did a short 10 pager as part of Lazarus Planet where Renee has to put on the question costume to fight this souped up serial killer that she just can't she doesn't want to have her team handle it because they just aren't equipped for handling that kind of villain. Um, And then I did a three-parter for Batman Brave and the Bold with Andy McDonald, who is fantastic. And it was a very noir, dark story about someone from Renee's past coming back and attacking her through her friends and loved ones. And that forces her to put the question mask on again. And it also dovetails with the end of her career as commissioner in Gotham. And so that's where we pick up in the question all along the Watchtower #1. She's reeling from losing her job, kind of questioning her next steps when she's approached by Batman, Superman, and Wonder Woman to basically come to the Watchtower and help them solve this mystery that's infected this base they've created as a safe haven for superheroes. And, when Batman tells you he can't figure something out, and Superman says he needs your help, and Wonder Woman asks you to lend a hand, you usually say yes. So they've put together this ad hoc team of other heroes to support Renee, and that includes Batwoman, Kate Kane, who she obviously has a very complicated history with, Buddy Baker, Animal Man, the two Blue Beetles, Ted Kord and Jaime Reyes, and you will see Nightshade, Eve Eden, as the series goes on, plus a lot of other Easter eggs and cameos. But the core of the story is Renee kind of trying to overcome her own inner demons and struggles to step up and solve this mystery and figure out who's trying to weaponize the Watchtower.
Yeah. What is it about you very often in your books like Silent City, the Pete Fernandez stuff, Dick Tracy novel, you seem to gravitate towards these kind of protagonists who maybe have to get their stuff together, solving crimes and when you're explaining, I'm like, this is perfect for you when talking about the
Yeah.
question. Where does that kind
Yeah,
of
I mean, I
gravitate
think
for you?
it yeah, I mean, I just think it's super relatable. I don't connect as a reader with characters that have it all figured out. I
Mhm.
connect with characters that are messy, that are trying to get their shit together, for lack of a better term,
Yeah.
trying to do what's right and trying to kind of become their best selves, which I think is very relatable and something we all struggle with if we're trying. If you're not trying,
Yeah.
then best wishes, I guess you figured it out. But and the thing that's really fun about the question is working with someone like Kian Torme, who's just such a fantastic artist and really has found the balance between the wide-eyed wonder of superhero comics and the DC universe, but the real noir underpinnings of the story. So we try to lean into that. Like we've got this great landscape to play with, but
Mhm.
it's a character-driven story. And so finding that balance is a challenge, but also the fun.
Yeah. Well, and it's so interesting to see, when you get a chance to tackle a character like the question, who
hmm
is, it's been written so many times, but such a great detective element to the question, right? That's why Renee makes perfect sense to take the mantle of the question of what she brought in Gotham, City and stuff like
hmm
that. So how do you kind of balance out the story that you want to tell in the midst of, this all this stuff is going on with what just happened with Absolute Power and everything else, all these DC all in books. How do you kind of find your spot to tell the story you want to tell?
Yeah, I mean the benefit of doing a quote unquote, no pun intended, satellite book to like what Wade and Maura are doing with Justice League Unlimited is that we're not driving the main narrative. So we
Mhm.
can kind of take the pieces that really complement our story and use them, but also add new things. Like, our book is really exploring the inner workings of the Watchtower in a way that some of the other books don't need to or don't or can't because they're telling stories elsewhere. But I think as writers, whenever you're dealing in a shared universe with continuity and other characters, you try to take the elements that augment what you're trying to say without contradicting anything else, So I knew that we wanted to tell a really character-driven mystery story with Renee at its center, but with this amazing backdrop. I think sometimes people assume that noir or detective stories have to happen like on really gritty streets with like the steam coming up from the sewer and walking through dark alleys. I think you can get that feeling anywhere in space, in the future, in the past, and I think it's really just about making sure the characters feel compelling. Because if you don't care about Renee, you're not going to care about this book. And so that's the core thing. We have to make readers care about her struggles and the struggles of her team, which she's been kind of thrust up. It's been thrust upon her, and so she has to balance working with these people that she didn't pick when she feels way over her head, and then suddenly things are not as they seem. So it's been a blast. I mean, Kian's a great partner creatively. Editorial, like Paul and Jillian, have been really supportive. So it's just been great to see the response, which feels really validating.
Yeah, because if you haven't had a chance to pick up issue one, it's in stores. It's so good.
Thank you.
When I saw you were doing the question, I was like, yes, let's go. Uh,
Oh, good.
because because I had just picked up recently, you'd sent me a copy of Alter Ego, and
Hmm.
that is your just your bread and butter. Like, give me a
Yeah.
mystery with Alex Segura's name on it, and I'm there.
Oh, thank you.
How is it then transitioning, like getting out of a comic book writing style mindset to a novel mindset? Because you are in the midst of so much writing, I think, comics and novels at the same time.
Mhm.
How do you kind of navigate that hat of which one to put on?
Oh man, I wish I had an easy answer. It's not easy. It's literally whatever is on fire the most, and I have to give it my not only the work of cranking on it, but also giving it the thought and the care so it feels like a story that I'm invested in and I would read. And that's really like the shorthand, like, is this something I would read and
Mhm.
enjoy as a reader? That's the only kind of guide I think creatives can use. Like and the hope is that because you like it and you're into it, somebody else will like it. I find that I tend to write more prose or better prose in the evening when it's a little quieter and the kids are asleep and I can, focus on it. And I tend to do a lot of my comic book writing during the day. Like in the morning, I'm checking emails, but I'm also working on a script and kind of the structural stuff of a script or building out a plot. That part of my brain seems to work better in the morning, but I'm also like a utility infielder. I can do whatever at any time. So, if the deadline requires, I will write 10,000 words in the morning. So I try not to put too many boxes or limits on when I can write and how I can write. Like I open my laptop, and if I'm sitting on my couch or I'm sitting at my kitchen table or I'm sitting in my office or in my kid's bedroom, uh, whatever whatever needs,
Yeah.
whatever the deadline demands, I try to do it.
Yeah. And because I wanted to ask that because as we mentioned at the beginning of the show and kind of throughout, people might know you as a comic book writer, but I
Mhm.
first kind of discovered you as a prose writer, through your Pete Fernandez series, through Secret Identity, and you just showed the cover for your new book, Alter Ego. Talk to me a little bit about that, what it is, and where the idea for a sequel to Secret Identity came for.
Yeah, Alter Ego, Flatiron, the publisher is calling it a quote unquote standalone sequel, which is a fancy way of saying you can read it on its own and it won't it'll be be a story with a beginning, middle, and end, or you can read it after reading Secret Identity and the links and have a greater understanding of that world. So Alter Ego is the story of Annie Bustamante, who is a former comic book artist. She got some acclaim, had some good runs, but left the industry after during a particularly dark time in her life and moved into film and has, after some time, become a pretty beloved film director. She's been nominated for an Oscar. She's done some work on some films that have gotten some renown, but now she's hit a lull. She's between projects. Her last movie got shelved for tax reasons, and she's kind of wondering, what do I do now? And so in the meantime, she's a mom. She's got a preteen daughter. she's moved back to New York from LA, and she's been working on this comic for fun, based on this character, the character that pulled her into comics as a fan, as a kid in Miami growing up. And it's called The Legendary Lynx. And nobody really knows about this character because it came out in the 70s, it disappeared, the company went bankrupt. And what really drew Annie into this book was that she recognized that another Cuban American woman, Carmen Valdez, had written an issue. And so that always intrigued her. And she went back and reread the whole series, all 11 issues, and just felt like this was a lost gem. And that's what pulled her into comics, pulled her into the passion of drawing. And so she's just doing this Lynx revamp or reboot for fun because yes, she waits for her agent to call with a new job. And then at the same time, coincidentally, she gets an email from this company called Triumph Entertainment. And Triumph Entertainment claims that they are the continuation of Triumph Comics, that they own the Triumph universe of characters, which includes the Lynx, and they are launching a multi-platform campaign to reboot the Lynx in comics, in television, in video games, in media, everywhere across the board. And they would love for Annie, who they know just based on social media that she is a Lynx fan, to relaunch the comic story and art. So it feels like a dream gig. It feels like a dream opportunity. And if you read Secret Identity, you also understand this is a similar fork in the road that Carmen Valdez ran into when she created the Lynx. Spoiler, it's not a huge spoiler. You figure that out pretty quickly in I think page one of Alter Ego.
Yeah.
Um, but Carmen was presented with the opportunity to create a character for Triumph, but she had to do it anonymously. And when she created the character anonymously, the Lynx, her collaborator was murdered. So no one in this universe, knows that Carmen created the Lynx. On paper, Carmen wrote one issue of the Lynx. She was finally credited at the end with one issue. So Annie sees it as a dream come true, and she takes the gig, but she soon realizes as well that these people at Triumph Entertainment don't hold the character in the same regard that she does, don't have the same passion for the character. And she starts getting messages from this encrypted account called Apparition. Apparition, if you know the Legendary Lynx, which you don't have to know, is the stick-like figure. If Lynx is Daredevil, Apparition is stick to her Daredevil, like her mentor. She's a ghost, basically. She was killed and avenged her death, and then became this kind of ethereal spirit haunting Triumph City. And she trained the Lynx into becoming that character. And so these messages are warning Annie of some deeper conspiracy and the dangers that would come with Annie taking this assignment. But Annie, like, literally, like, is like, this is spam or some kind of troll, so I'm just going to do what I'm going to do. But she's smart, and as she gets deeper and deeper into this assignment, she realizes that not only are these people disinterested, there are some people that would kill to prevent the truth about the Lynx from coming out. And that is the springboard for Alter Ego and the mystery of Alter Ego. And as you read the mystery and the thriller, you see pages from Annie's relaunch called The Lynx Returns, where she's trying to revamp the character very much in the way that, we've seen it so many times. But I think the thing I leaned into most was like what people did post-Crisis, post-Crisis on Infinite Earths, where someone would take, the core of the character, reboot it, but also add elements from the lore. So Claudia Kala wakes up and has forgotten that she was the Lynx, and now it's about her trying to figure out what happened and what are these visions she's having, or what's this costume she found. And so it's a nice little dual narrative that hopefully people enjoy.
Yeah. Gang, if that didn't sell you on picking up this novel,
Thank
I don't
you.
know, you don't like to read. Because it's
Yeah.
so it's so good.
Thank you for reading it. Yeah.
I'm so intrigued. I want to read it again. One of the things that you did a lot with Secret Identity of throwing the pages of Legendary Links throughout it, um,
Hmm.
and getting the kind of allowing the reader to get to experience who these characters are a little bit, by seeing them visually. Uh, Alongside, you also have a work with Mad Cave now of
Yeah.
it's like basically like a 4 issue trade. It seems like that
Hmm.
came out that they can read and get to experience. Where was that mindset of like, let's do this to kind of be a companion piece? It seems like.
It is. It is very much a companion piece. And it was while we were doing Secret Identity, we sold the book with a pitch and some sample chapters, but also I had Sandy Gerald, the amazing artist who did the comic book sequences in Secret Identity, Alter Ego, and the comic The Lynx. I had him do a sample page kind of as a proof of concept. And so that's, I think, what helped sell it to Flatiron, that they saw story and art and were like, okay, this is what it is. And as we were doing Secret Identity, we were creating these comic pages alongside the novel, and every time Sandy and I would just tell each other like, "This is a comic," because we would be thinking we didn't just do the sequences, like we were thinking bigger picture, like
Yeah.
these are her villains, this is her supporting cast, these are the cliffhangers at the end of each issue, this is the very awkward fill-in issue where somebody else steps in and does the comic, um, and so we were able to through Zestworld, which was this digital platform a few years back, they funded and gave us the opportunity to basically create 4 issues of content that serve as those first 4 issues of the links. And the way we're treating it is like now Mad Cave is releasing this lost classic and reprinting it, and we've been able to remaster and recolor and rework it. Um, and I think it's really a testament to the skill of someone like Sandy Jarrell, who's just a great artist, really loves that period of comics and was able to evoke it, with Gray Allison on colors, Jack Morelli on letters, and Allison O'Toole as our editor. We were really able to kind of manifest this character into comic book history, which felt so wild.
Yeah. That is something that is it's been fascinating for me as I read. I'm like, with Triumph Entertainment, Triumph Comics,
Hmm.
the way that you talk about the legendary links throughout the books and you integrate it in the midst of real life, you're mentioning real life comic book writers and creators, and it just is this kind of flawless blend. Where was that mindset of like trying to get this like let's take this company that we're creating for the book to tell the story we want to tell, but like let's interweave it with real comic book world.
Yeah, I mean that's really just a testament to the team, and also like J.M. DeMatteis, who's one of my favorite comic book writers and just this very sweet, talented guy. Wrote one of my favorite Spider-Man stories in with his run in Craven's Last Hunt, and also his stuff on Spectacular Spider-Man. He reached out to me about Secret Identity and said he had really really enjoyed it. And I told him about the link stuff, and I said it would be cool if you wrote like an intro. Like he wrote the foreword to the trade, and it's very much tongue in cheek. Like he writes about it as if the links inspired him at the time. Um, so I really have to give credit where credit is due. Like Cavalier and Clay was a huge influence on all these books because, what Chabon did with that novel is he wove the escapist stuff into actual comic book lore. And my only takeaway from that, my only kind of not criticism, but my only wish was I wanted to read those escapist comics in the novel. And that's really what spurred Secret Identity. But they eventually did those escapist books with Dark Horse, and they were treated very much like in-world stories. And so that's what we tried to do with the links. So I don't want it to seem like we're claiming to be the first to do this, but it was so fun. Like I
Yeah.
love meta stuff like that, where you feel like you're being transported to this other world, or that these fictional stories actually happen, because Sandy and I have gotten emails or people have spoken to us and asked us like, I've been looking for the links issues and I can't find them. Or somebody asked Sandy like, oh, how much work did you do on Doug Detmer's original artwork to like get to this final product? And I don't want to make it seem like our intent is to trick anyone,
Yeah.
but I think that goes to show you like how genuine and how real these feel, like that people are reading these fictional stories and are feeling like, well, this must have happened, like this
Right.
has to have been part of comic book history. So I joke with Sandy that we've manifested this character and this idea into actual comic book history. Like who's to say it didn't happen?
Right.
I mean, the
Well, and
comics are out there.
right. And we've had these conversations and, I have this mindset going in, but still, even reading Alter Ego, I'm like, hold on, wait a second. I'm like, wait, is Annie a
Yeah,
real comic book creator? Like, because
right.
then, you talk about, Annie starts, at a Comic Con kind of thing and is doing, I'm like, all right, now I'm then doing research. I'm like, all right, let me see. Did you work on real comics? Like,
Hmm. Right. Yeah. I mean, because she quote unquote worked on the Thunder Agents, or was on, she worked for quote Blast Radius Comics on this comic called The Renegade. So it all feels like it could be true. And
right.
who's to say it isn't? Part
Yeah.
of the fun is enjoying it as if it was.
So where was where was the idea to have kind of a shift with the standalone novel, right? Because the Secret Identity, it was
Hmm.
very much in the a mystery set in the place of like a 1970s smaller comic book publisher, where this you're kind of into the more the nowadays modern age multi-conglomerate, like it's not just
Hmm.
comic books. Where did you kind of think like this is I want to go into this route now with a sequel?
Yeah, I think Secret Identity gave you a picture of a comic book industry that no longer exists, like
Mhm.
this world where, the talent weren't really thinking of like, oh, I'm going to own this character. It's going to become a movie. Like the idea of quote unquote IP didn't really exist. Like these companies weren't owned by mega corporations. They were publishing houses and even Triumph Comics really made their living, or not living, but their business thrived on the pulp magazines and other tchotchkes they sold. It wasn't about selling comics. So it wasn't, none of these players really thought of comics as a big money maker. Now, that's no longer the case. Like comics are ever present in pop culture. Creators you have to be mindful of your IP and your characters and who owns them and what rights you give away. So you're one good story away from $1 billion industry. And I really wanted to show the other side of that coin. So the idea didn't strike me until the end of writing Secret Identity when I turned it in and I was going over it with my editor, Zach at Flatiron. And he said, I think people are going to want to know what happened to Carmen. They're going to want to know where she is in the modern day. So why not give them a glimpse? And so as I wrote this epilogue, where it doesn't really spoil much, where a reporter basically visits Carmen's home and has her admit that yes, I created the links, and she gets it on tape. And so that's literally what sprung me into Alter Ego. And I knew that was the opening scene where this reporter is killed and driven off the road because she has some information that could put the Lynx's ownership at risk.
Mhm.
And then, then I figured out who Annie was and what her role in the story was. But that's the big connective tissue. The character is what connects the two stories, but it's two very different comic book industries.
Yeah. Is the process similar to writing comics to writing prose with, a lot of times you want to end a comic on a cliffhanger to get people to buy the next issue and vice versa. You kind of want that end that chapter with what happens next. Like does that kind of mindset still or
Yeah, it's similar. It's like similar drops in the bucket. Like I want people to read a chapter and be like, "Oh man, I have to keep reading. I have to keep turning the page." Um, Comics are the same, that you want each kind of dose of
yeah.
story to feed into the next one while still telling a bigger story. It's not one for one, but it's definitely for me. I want to keep people turning pages or buying comics.
Yeah. How so I know if you looked in the back of like Secret Identity, you did a lot of research kind of gathering information about like how comics took place. Did you have to do as much research for this, or was this a little bit more of like you're in it, you're in this kind of
Yeah.
era of it right now of dealing with, you know, whether it's working on a Bruno book or like you're dealing with all these industries and corporations. Did you have to do as much research or was it a little bit more of
It was more, Secret Identity was very much talking to people who were there,
yeah.
especially women that worked in comics like Linda Fight and Louise Simonson, and others that were there and could give me some context. I spoke to Jerry Conway for a long time just to learn about what it was like working in comics at the time because I wasn't alive and I was definitely not working in comics. So the alter ego stuff was less about the nuts and bolts of working in comics because I've seen those sides of it as an editor, as a publicist, as a marketing person, as a creator. It was more about the landscape of characters and owning characters and the saga of these different kinds of IPs that change owners, that um, go dormant and then are picked up again and rebooted and revamped. Um, but also the history of media companies and these things that start off as mom and pop ideas or companies and then get bought out and reformatted. Like I read a lot of books about TSR, the company that started Dungeons and Dragons. I read a lot of books about different characters that started off in the 40s and 50s, like Zorro, or more recently, like in the 80s, like Miracle Man, that go through a lot of these creative and ownership changes and have issues where their rights are questioned and people don't know who actually owns the character. Like I find that stuff really fascinating, but also like following the history of things like the Marvel Cinematic Universe, like how things go from being a comic book company to this big mega media empire. And it's not a criticism, it's just fascinating. And so reading those things, reading about those evolutions really gave me a sense of what the landscape was like and how things can change, how something like the Lynx, which was this very a footnote in comics history, like it was around for 12 issues from this company that disappeared soon after. How could that then come into play in the modern day and be a force and be worth killing over,
Yeah. So you have so much there's some moments in the book I don't want to spoil, but I'm very
Yeah.
glad that you did what you did. Let's just leave it at that.
Hmm.
as a fan of yours for a long time.
Oh, thanks. Yeah. Yeah, there's a ton of Easter eggs in there.
Yes. So I think that's something that is really cool for people to get to experience and get to enjoy. Where do you kind of come about with your ideas of like, you know, if you want to expand and continue to go in this world or universe of like alter ego, is it something that like you kind of vision cast out for, or you're like, you know what, I'm just focused on what I'm creating right now, and if something then if I get an idea later, I'll go with it.
I think that the universe, the secret identity, I guess, universe that includes the links and the characters in the novels. I haven't had that moment of lightning striking and saying there's another story
Right.
here. I feel like there's so much there. Like there's a universe of superheroes and characters that you could explore. There's, Annie's story and Carmen's story, and then, Margot, Annie's daughter, is a key character as well, but there's no definitive like next story.
Yeah.
So my next novel, my next crime novel is in a whole different world. I mean, actually, let me stop myself. All my stuff happens in the same universe in my mind. Like there's a character that shows up in Alter Ego that if you've read my other novels, you know who that is and how important that character is to me. And so in my head, all this stuff is happening in this unified universe. And a lot of comic book references are made to other work that I've done. But my point is, my next crime novel has very little to do with the comic book industry, which is fine.
Yeah.
I think I've kind of said my piece here, and I think I'm really proud of it, but I needed to do I want to do something else.
Yeah. Um, well, Alex, I could talk to you forever
Yeah,
about your work, but I want to respect your time.
thank you.
Also, at the same time that Alter Ego is coming out, the next arc of Dick Tracy is coming out as well.
Yeah.
Uh,
It's going to be a really dark one. Not which isn't to say that our first arc was light fare, but it goes from this big epic gang war story that Mike Moreci and Geraldo and I were putting together to a very dark, intimate, creepy, almost manhunter type vibe. And we bring back a key Dick Tracy villain that we haven't seen that people were like, well, what about so and so? So I don't want to spoil it. It'll be fun. And we're also doing a Valentine's special with Craig Kermack. Cermak is yes, Cermak. Yeah, is doing the art with me and Mike Moreci, and Steve Orlando and Brent Schoonover are doing another story in there, and it's going to be a lot of fun.
yes, that just makes me happy. So,
Yeah.
gang, if you if you haven't picked up the first volume of Dick Tracy, I think the trade comes out in December as well.
Yes. It comes out in December, and then we kick into the next arc pretty quickly.
And I've been if you watch my show, I've been raving about it. Issue
Thank
6
you.
jumps right back into where the goodness that you all, if you like the first volume, you're gonna like issue 6 as well. So it does not disappoint. What else? I hesitate to ask what else you got going on that you would like to promote before we wrap up. If there's anything that you want to mention that's out.
Yeah, Question All Along the Watchtower just came out. Alter Ego is about to hit. And the links just came out from Mad Cave. So if you want to feel that big, wider, like secret identity universe, you'll have all the pieces very soon. I wrote a middle grade Encanto novel called Nightmares and Sueños, and it's a prequel to Encanto the movie. So I get to talk about Bruno, and you get to find out what happened to him and what really drove him from Casita and his family, which tees up the movie itself. And what else? Dick Tracy. I'm doing a ton of Star Wars stuff for Marvel. The Battle of Jakku. It's 3 4 issue miniseries that altogether is a 12 issue lead in to the Battle of Jakku, which closes out in The Last Stand. All of that is happening now. I think we're putting out two books every 2 weeks. We have a new issue coming out, so it's a lot of great artists: Leonard Kirk, Stefano Raphael, Jethro Morales, Luke Ross, a really killer team. It's a big epic story featuring all the key characters: Luke, Leia, Han, um, fighting a new threat that is poised to derail this final battle between the Empire and the rebels. So that's been a huge thrill to write. And I also have a one shot coming out in January that is basically what if Galactus made Moon Knight his herald, and it's part of a month-long event where different characters are spotlighted. But I get to work with Scott Eaton on art. Chris Campano also does a few pages of interiors, and that's just been a blast. It's I love Moon Knight. I'm particularly fond of the Doug Mensch Sienkiewicz run, so it was a little bit of a nod to that, but a big nod to the '90s cosmic stuff that I enjoyed as a kid. So.
Yeah. Well, Alex, thank you so much for taking some time to talk about your
Yeah, man.
novel
Always
and
a
your
treat.
work in comics. Where can people follow along with you, stay up to date? So when you are posting stuff, or sending out newsletters or things, where can people follow along with you?
Yeah, I have a website, alexsegura.com. You can also sign up for my newsletter, alexsegura.substack.com. And I'm on Blue Sky. I've become a little more active on Blue Sky. It seems like the happy version of what Twitter once was. I do have a Threads account, so you can follow a lot of stuff on there as well. So I'm pretty easy to find. So
Right. Well,
that's it.
gang, go pick up Alter Ego. I highly recommend it. Check out Legendary Links. Check out Dick Tracy. Check out the question. Check out everything that we've talked about.
Thanks, man.
Um, you got a lot of stuff, so I'm always excited to see your name attached to a book. But with that being said, gang, hopefully you can find some time to curl up, grab a book, and nerd out. Peace.
Thank you.